Section 9.2.43. People were polled on how many books they read the previous year. Initial survey results indicate that the sample standard deviation is equal to 21.2 books. We want to complete parts A through D below. How many subjects are needed to estimate the mean number of books read the previous year within 2 books with 90% confidence? So how many subjects mean is that we're looking for the sample size. Okay, so recall that the formula for finding the sample size is n, which is equal to the critical value of z times the sample standard deviation over the margin of error squared. Okay, so we need to write down the given information. Okay, so we're looking for the sample size, okay, and we're given the sample standard deviation to be 21.2 books. Okay, and then what is the margin of error? Well, the margin of error is saying here that it's within 2 books. So 2 represents the margin of error. Okay, and now what we need to do is we need to figure out what is this critical value. So what is the critical value in our problem? So we need to know what is z alpha divided by 2. Well, we know that we're using a 90% confidence, so we can use the table for that. So I'm going to come down here, I'm going to copy this table. Okay, and, oops, let's do that again. Okay, so there is our critical value of z. So we know that we're dealing with 90%, and so the area in each tail would be 0.05, and therefore the critical value is going to be 1.645. Or we can just find it by using INV norm or by using a table. So now what we want to do is we're going to use our formula. So we know that n is going to equal the critical value, which is 1.645 multiplied by the standard deviation of 21.2 divided by the margin of error of 2, and then we're going to square the result. So therefore, let's take a look on our calculator and see what we get. Alright, so we have 1.645 times 21.2, and then we're going to divide that by 2, and then we're going to take this answer and square it. So we're going to hit second and then answer, and then we're going to square that result, and therefore we get the following answer. Okay, now remember that when we're dealing with sample sizes, okay, we have kind of this decimal that we're dealing with, so we need to round up. So we're going to round up to 305. So the sample size is going to be 305. So to summarize this result, we're going to say that therefore a 90% confidence level with a margin error of 2 books requires 305 subjects. Okay, now let's move on to part B. Okay, so here's part B. Let's move these down a little bit further here. Okay, so for part B it says how many subjects are needed to estimate the mean number of books read the previous year within 1 book with 90% confidence. Okay, so basically we're going to write down all the information that we need to know. So again, we're looking for how many subjects, so we're still looking for n. Okay, we also know that the standard deviation is going to be the same, which is 21.2. But the margin of error is now changed because it says within 1 book. So now the margin of error is equal to 1. And the critical z value is also going to remain the same because it's 90%. So that's 1.645. So again, let's go ahead and put this into our formula. So n is going to equal the critical value of 1.645 times the standard deviation of 21.2 divided by the margin of error of 1, and then we're going to square that result. So if we put that in our calculator, so we take 1.645, we're going to multiply that by 21.2. And if we divide it by 1, it's going to give us the same result. And then we're going to take that answer and we're going to square it. And so therefore, it's going to give us this result. Okay, so remember that whenever we're dealing with the sample size, we're going to have to round up. So rounding up tells us that the sample size now is going to be 1,217. And so therefore, we can say that a 90% confidence level with a margin of error of 1 book requires 1,217 subjects. Okay, so now we need to answer part C. Now part C says, what effect does doubling the required accuracy have on the sample size? Okay, well let's take, if you look here, if you multiply 304 times 4, it's going to give you approximately 1,1216. So what effect does doubling the required accuracy have on the sample size? Well, we're going to say that the doubling the required accuracy nearly quadruples the sample size. Okay, now let's take a look at part D. It says, how many subjects are needed to estimate the mean number of books read the previous year within 2 books within 99% confidence? And compare this result to part A. And then how does this increasing the level of confidence in the estimate affect sample size, and why is this reasonable? Okay, so what we're going to do is, in part A, we still know that the sample standard deviation is still going to be 21.2. We know that the margin of error is going to be 2. We're looking for the sample size, and we need to know what is the critical value. Okay, well, the critical value is asking us to use 99% confidence. So if we come down here, we know that we have a table which is 99%, which is 0.005, and therefore the critical value is 2.575. So therefore the critical value is 2.575. Okay, and so now what we're going to do is we're going to use that formula. And so we're going to let n equal, we're going to take the critical value, which is 2.575. We're going to multiply it by the standard deviation, which is 21.2. And then we're going to divide that by the margin of error, which is 2. And then we're going to square that result. So if we're using our calculator, we're taking 2.575, multiplying that by 21.2. And then we're going to divide that by 2. And then the answer, we're going to square it. So we're going to take the second and then answer, and then we're going to square it. And then that gives us the following result. So if we want to round this up, since it's a sample size, then we're going to say that n is going to equal 746. Okay. So now the next question says, how does increasing the level of confidence in the estimate affect sample size, and why is this reasonable? Well, increasing the level of confidence increases the sample size required. For a fixed margin of error, greater confidence can be achieved with a larger sample size.